Hello and welcome everyone to another episode. Yeah, so I don't even know if I should stick this under mega ship construction or I don't even know, to be honest. I don't even know if I'm gonna make this a regular episode or mega ship construction, but anyways, let's get to it. So I was asked basically how this ship was created. Like from the ground up, how I created it. So you can see what I have in the VAB is the basic layout of the ship. There really isn't much change from this ship to the one I have in orbit. The only thing that's different, you can see, you know, one of these, this is actually recessed in and all that other stuff. I think I ended up adding a few extra things, and that was just like last minute necessity things that I totally just forgot about or whatever. But anyway, so let's get to how I like design the ship and everything. So basically I want to cover the number one thing is how I got the ship to be so long, and basically how I made it this long and every piece make it fit up almost perfectly. So if I wanted to right now, I can break this ship up into sections, and these are the individual sections that I knew I had to launch. So this is the first launch here, the second launch here, and the third launch here, and then we have the main bridge here. So basically, with this game, the one thing that you have to really understand is that your entire rocket is based off of your command module that you initially set up when you build your craft. Now, that is where the problem lies with building something like this and making it absolutely perfect like I did. And, you know, I can just take this, I don't have to change anything, I can just bring it all right back to the way it was, and everything just fits up nice and perfectly. Now, the one thing I'm going to mention is all of these outside docking ports aren't actually making connections with the ship. It's the only the center docking port is making a connection in the VAB. In the VAB, that's what really matters. In the VAB, it's making a connection in this area. None of these are connected, even though they are close enough to be connected. So with my first part, it was relatively simple because all I had to do was get rid of all of this, you know, and just dump it, and, you know, just build a rocket underneath it. But this is where it gets complicated. So you might ask, okay, so this is the way I did it, and I think there is an easier way to do it, but basically this is what I did in order to get my second piece. So I took this, got rid of it because we need a new command module. So I'd bring this piece up here and then work everything back up once again. There we go. And then this is where it gets complicated. So this is the piece that we want to launch. So I had to work this piece down because if you look, I can't just simply take this piece and put it right here, at least for now in the game. I believe they're going to be fixing that soon, where you can copy and paste pieces, all that other good stuff. So basically this is what I had to do. So this is just you just gotta work each piece up and keep working each piece up. It's a little bit annoying, it's a little bit of a pain with, you know, basically however many layers you have your ship. If you want to call this like a layer, that's how many times you actually have to do this. So it wears on you pretty quickly once you start getting into the lower portions of the ship. Let's see here. But once you start adding basically all the other pieces to it, there was a trick I did. I can't recall exactly what I was doing, but it worked so well I can't remember exactly what I was doing, but it worked out like perfectly. But, you know, basically you could do that right there, and then you could set up your command module. But I think what I just did was kind of, no, actually, if you launch your bridge You can launch your bridge without doing that. I should take that back. But basically what I did was the same thing. So, you know, basically you detach the piece, you work it up. You don't have to actually keep these connected, but, you know, it just makes things easier when you're building it out. Building the ship and all that other good stuff. Now, you don't lose symmetry, but, like, say if you put a piece in a specific way, sometimes you lose it. Like, if you put it in if you put it facing a specific angle or specific way, you might end up losing the angle that it's pointed at, and that's fairly annoying, but it's always fixable. You know, it's little things. So basically you work these pieces up and you just keep working up until you get your main piece that you're trying to launch onto the top, which kinda sucks. Like I said, it kinda wears on you, but it's worth it. Honestly, if it comes down to shipbuilding, and this is the easy, like, if I were to explain this, or you look at it and you think it's the hardest way to do things, this is actually probably the easiest way to build these ships. Before, I used to use, like, measuring and basically using parts to measure out the distances between parts, and that was never always 100%. Like, you might be off by, I don't know, maybe a little tiny bit on one of your docking ports, and if you're off by that much, there's a good chance it's probably not going to make its connection. So we can move this out of the way here, and then bring this up, bring that over, boom, and then this is what I did for my launches, and then, you know, I built the rocket afterwards. But the one thing you got to remember is you got to save it into individual parts. If you look, you know, basically part 1 is basically, I built it first, then I saved the bridge, and then this is fuel tank, engine, and that's it. You know, the Jool 14 test, that is my plane that I built, but I ended up building it in the spaceplane hangar and then transferring the craft file over from the spaceplane hangar to the rocket hangar or whatever, the VAB. So you can do that. That's one thing that really is cool, is you can transfer file from the spaceplane hangar to the VAB, and it's not going to have any problems. The one thing that does happen, though, is when at the end of the flight, when you want to revert, for me, it was sending me back to the spaceplane hangar for some reason. I think it has something to do with the files, so I should just mention that. That will probably save me a few messages, emails, whatever. But, so, like, you know, my space portion of the ship, or not the space portion, but the portion that got it into orbit and got it docked up with the other piece, is built afterwards, you know, and then it just, where is it, yeah, just slap on a couple of these, boom, there you go. Where's the nuclear engine? There we go. And then you can, you know, slap on your SAS. I used the radial tanks because they're lighter, and, you know, you're basically bringing about the same amount of SAS, a little bit less, and, you know, you're using a little bit less weight. You know, it helps, even though it's not a lot. But as far as the fuel lines go, basically what I ended up doing, and I didn't do it this way, I ended up putting the radial decoupler first, but, you know, I put this tank here, there was a radial decoupler between these two, fuel lines running up to here, you know, just to drain out all the fuel lines going down, I believe, and then the fuel lines going to the main part of the rocket that I used to launch it. So the main engines to get us into orbit used all the fuel that was inside of all of these tanks. And this is kind of a good thing. If you're trying to get big pieces up, like this one main piece is going all the way into orbit, draining all the fuel out and then launching it is a lot easier than building a rocket around the entire mass of this thing and trying to launch this thing full. It can be done, but I wouldn't suggest doing it because you'll probably kill your computer in the process. But yeah, so there really isn't a lot involved in actually getting this thing built. I mean, it most of the time I spent was in the VAB and trying to figure out how this thing is going to operate in space. So when it comes down to the fuel tanks too, and lining up the parts, I have done videos on this in the past, which is what I'm just gonna reload the Jool Explorer here because we kind of messed everything up. So yeah. Now, in the past, I've explained this before, but I'm just gonna explain it again for you guys one more time. Now, when it comes down to lining these pieces up, when you want to get a perfect, solid connection like that, where both of these, there's almost little to no difference between the modules as far as, like, the distance between the docking ports, and, you know, and there's really almost no separation in any direction. It's basically perfectly lined up. Basically, to do this isn't really too complicated, but a lot of people, you know, make it sound a lot harder than it actually is. So you can see in the front here, I have this main strut piece connecting these tanks. Now, what that does is set up kind of like a base point for how far out this ship is really going to reach, like exactly how many wide it's going to be and how far out the center is from the center to the outside of the ship. So, you know, I could use, you know, let's say for right now, I wanted to change out, and I wanted to make this thing, like, really wide. So, I would take this piece here, and I'm gonna separate this first, because it's just gonna be annoying. So, basically, just remove this. Oh, nope. There we go. Give me that back, please. There we go. So basically, you take this piece here, you know, say we wanted to make this thing wider. So you take this piece off here, and just add on a new one here. Let's see, come up there. There we go. Is that lined up? No, it's not. There we go. Hey, come on. I don't know, sometimes these parts don't behave. It's kind of annoying. So there we go. That's, you know, our fuel, no, that's not good. Raise that up a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, no. What's going on here? ESA not working. Let's see. There we go. Now our fuel line is attached and all that other good stuff. So you'll see, now it's not matched up over here anymore. So when it comes down to making the body, see, this is the other tip I think I should mention as well. The reason why it gets smaller here is because right here where this main piece is coming off, it's the same height as this. So I'm not going to change the height in any kind of way, because if I were to bring that out even a little bit, it would throw everything off. So, like, you know, with these main bigger tanks, I don't know what these are called exactly, the 3.5 or whatever they are, I don't remember, but basically you want to bring it down to where it's just the regular size tank here. I mean, this is just an empty fuselage, and you know, you can basically do whatever you want with that, but you can't add any height to it. That's the main problem. So I'll take this off and get rid of this and bring this back here. And this is exactly what I did when I was building this, so don't think I'm like, you know, just coming up with this stuff. So come on. Now I find that, like, sometimes these, I like to clip these in here because I think it's easier and it causes less problems, but sometimes the part just doesn't want to go in. Come on. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna work, but basically you can go like that, and then, you know, just keep flipping them around until, keep flipping them around until, you know, you got all the way around. It doesn't make that much of a difference. It won't mess up with the symmetry, and it won't mess up anything else, so it's not that big of a deal. So, let's see here. Let's see. What did I do wrong? I'm looking at this like, I did something wrong? Yeah, I don't understand. These pieces are so much further out. That doesn't make any sense. I think I did something wrong, and I'm just not recalling it. Oh, yeah, I did. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's what happened. There we go. So bring this back, and I was looking at this thing because it ended up going inside. It was like clipping through it, so everything got screwed up. So you can see these pieces, they'll fit up perfectly. There is no separation. I mean, right now, there is a little gap there, but basically by adjusting these and moving them up or down, it will create a gap that you will need. I generally just kind of put them as close as they possibly can before the editor won't let you actually do that anymore. So you can just bring it up and, you know, just keep moving them up and down until you feel like fairly confident that that piece would be considered to be docked up if it were in space. So you can see it's like pretty well docked up. The one thing I did make kind of a problem with, and this is like, I should mention this as well, because I didn't even realize this until after I built this thing, and then I went and kind of made some redesigns and stuff like that and tried changing some things. This main fuselage here, even though there is no difference between this and this technically as far as connecting and everything else in size, this is a slight bit smaller than this. Just a little bit. Otherwise it's the other way around. But you'll notice, and I've noticed this now, and I also noticed this a while ago when I was building, is you see there's like a little tiny gap there. But if you look at like something like this, when I had them put back together, there was no gap, no spaces, everything was perfectly lined up, there was no problems with it. So I think sticking with a fuselage or something like that is a little bit better, or maybe sticking with a fuel tank would be better, because then you could empty it and it would be less mass than a fuselage. I don't know, that would be your choice, because this is 0.4, and I think the smaller one is like 0.125 or something like that. Most of these parts, I usually know the baseline as far as how heavy they are. Yeah, it's 0.25. So, that would be your choice. You could even shorten it as well, and you could probably go with something like this as long as you lined up the pieces beforehand and everything was lined up. Like, I could have probably put this right here and then had this engine just recessed back a little bit more, but it's not that big of a deal. You know, not bringing an extra 90 units of fuel, you know, if you're trying to squeeze as much space as you can for fuel, then that would be your best option, is like replacing some of this stuff. You know, taking off certain parts that you think are useless and, you know, you don't need them, like this. I did that for aesthetics, to make it look better than just having an open part connected to a tank. It just, to me, it looked a little bit ugly, so I've been doing that a lot more lately. I don't really favor aesthetics over the actual creation of the ship and its specific purpose, but I do like things looking pretty. So there's a definite balance between the two. The other thing too, this isn't really going to be used much, because chances are I'm just going to keep these on there because the weight of these little tanks really isn't that big of a deal. You know, you're talking, this is a little bit under about a ton with the docking port included. So or did I say ton? I don't know if I said a ton or half ton, but this is a little bit under like a half a ton with a docking port included. But basically these are made to be decoupled, so if they're empty you can just get rid of them. It's extra weight that you don't need. Now I'm probably not going to use this because it really doesn't matter 100%, but it's kind of one of those things that if it's like a last resort, you're trying to bleed out as much weight as you can get rid of all of these. They're all empty. I do end up bleeding out a lot of RCS with this ship because I don't use all of it. There's no point in carrying it if you're not using all of it. And anytime I go to refuel this from now on, I probably am going to leave one tank completely empty, and the other two I'm probably going to fill most of the way, if not completely full. So, I mean, you're talking like peanuts when it comes to weight with this thing, but every ton makes a difference. Every ton. And if you guys aren't like 100%, you know, as far as how much this thing weighs full, I can just show you right now. I was kind of blown away by how heavy this thing actually is. Yeah, so got this infinite loading time. It's just, yeah, I can't stand it. So, yeah, anyways, with the weight full, you're not gonna believe this, and I couldn't really believe it because I kept on just making random guesses to see how full this thing actually is. Yeah, it's 550 tons. And this is with everything docked up. The last piece I just added to it, everything. 550 tons. It's just staggering. I can't believe on how much this thing weighs. It probably is the heaviest ship I've ever built. Probably the most complex, and probably definitely the largest overall. But you know, I'm really hoping that it pulls through and everything else. And the other thing I'm going to mention too is once you build a ship like this, especially if you do it in low carbon orbit like I did, and I did that because simply bringing these parts out, the further you bring them out, the more delta V you need, and the more time it's going to take in a way. So you're going to have to bring up more fuel and keep dragging up more stuff just in order to get the part docked up with another one. So if you do it at like a altitude of like 70 or 60, you know, a little bit under, you know, between 70 and just right at the very brim, you know, the very outside of the atmosphere, you don't need as much delta V to get it into orbit and to, you know, maneuver around and get the piece docked up with the other part. So it really does kind of help out. But the problem is you can't launch from there. I really wouldn't suggest it because the amount of power you're going to use would be the same exact if you're going to go to the moon, but only you're dragging a 550 ton object, and you got to do an 850 meter second burn roughly to get to the moon. So if you bring it out to like right here, to 2.6, something like that, it drops it from 850 or so, or, you know, that's just a rough guess. It drops it down to like somewhere around 250, and maybe a little bit higher than 300, or maybe a little bit closer to 300, but in between that. So anyways, guys, this was a lot of little tips and stuff that I've tried to give you on building these things. I mean, I've tried my best. If you still have questions, I'll try to answer them without reverting back to the VAB on this thing, but this is pretty much most of the tips and stuff that I use to build this thing. So anyways, guys, thank you for watching. If you like what you see here, subscribe. There's always more to come, and yeah, I will see you next time.